Hello everyone, my name is Bo Higginbotham. I am a judge here in Baton Rouge, Louisiana for the District Court, which is for the state of Louisiana. I understand y'all are learning about the three branches of government, and I'm sure y'all have learned about the legislative and the executive. Well, I'm a part of the judicial branch of government. My job is to uphold the laws and the Constitution of the state of Louisiana and of the United States of America. So today I'm going to kind of give you a tour around the courtroom, tell you what I do, tell you what the prosecutor does and what the defense does. As you can see, this is my bench. This is where I preside over all of the cases that come through in this courtroom. If you pan over here, you will see the jury box. You will have probably seen or learned that anyone charged with a felony crime is entitled to a jury of their peers. This is where the jury would sit in a trial. And as I get up, we will pan around to the other side of the courtroom and kind of tell you what people do. Right here, my deputy, who is in the hallway right there, he maintains the peace and dignity of the courtroom. At this table, this is where the defense, this is where they do their work. So anyone who's charged with a crime, the defendant would sit at this table during any proceeding, hearing, or trial, along with the defense attorney. At this table, this is where the state or the prosecution sits. So anyone that is charged with a crime, the district attorney's office has people that come and say, all right, I'm going to charge them with this crime. Well, this is where they would sit. And then I would be up there. The state would produce the evidence to the court or the trier of fact, meaning the jury. And the defense would make sure that the prosecution is doing their job based upon the rules and the laws contained within our code. That would all be done in front of me. I am kind of the referee, so to speak. I make sure that justice is achieved by making sure that the state, meaning the prosecutors, do their job, and making sure that the defense does their job, so that whatever outcome comes when the trier of fact hands down the decision, whether or not somebody is guilty or not guilty, we can be confident that that ruling, that decision was obtained in the best way possible. All right, boys and girls, this is Christy Chapman. She is one of the prosecutors in my courtroom. She works for the district attorney's office. So I'm going to turn it over to her to let you know a little bit. I talked about their job earlier, but I'm going to let her speak to it so that you get a better understanding of what they do.
Hi everyone, my name is Christy Chapman. My son is Reese Chapman. He's in the 5th grade this year. I'm a prosecutor. That means I'm an assistant district attorney with the state of Louisiana. And what we do is we get, when crimes happen, they come to our office and we decide if we're going to have charges against somebody, if they might need to stay in jail, or whatever we need to do to make sure that the public is safe. So I hope that you enjoy learning about the judicial system and can't wait to see you guys.
All right, boys and girls, earlier I was talking about the security of our courthouse and the courtroom. This is Deputy Elvis Robertson. He's been my the guy that's in my courtroom that makes sure that everything is done peacefully. I want to turn it over to him just for a second to give him an opportunity to let you know what he does for the judicial system in this courtroom and courthouse.
Good morning, boys and girls. My name is Deputy Elvis Robinson. I'm here to make sure that the courtroom is safe and that when you come into court, you're quiet and you pay attention to what's going on in court. We have order, and that's what I have to do in court. And that's part of my duties, and we make sure that everyone's in here that are safe and protecting the judge.
Which he does a very good job of, very good job. All right, boys and girls, earlier I was talking about the jobs that the specific people do inside the courtroom every single day. This is Scott Collier. He is an assistant public defender. They serve a vital purpose in our judicial system, and I'm going to turn it over to him to explain to you what he does on a day-to-day basis and overall.
Good morning. Again, my name's Scott Collier, and I'm a public defender. I've been doing this for about 20 years, although I graduated from law school a little bit before that, so I've been a lawyer for roughly 25 years, and most of my jobs have been helping people who are charged with crimes. What that means is they've been accused of something, and I am their lawyer to help them understand what's going on, what's they're accused of, and really to kind of figure out what's the best thing for them to do. You may have heard of a jury trial. Some of them want to have their case heard by a jury, and they are entitled to a jury trial, and the jury decides what the state proved and what the state didn't prove. And that's really my main job. Now, sometimes people say, well, you know, basically I did do what they said I did, and so I help them understand, you know, what the consequences of that will be, and make sure they understand what's going to happen if they acknowledge or, you know, admit to what they did. So those are kind of my main roles, and bottom line is that we try to make sure that they understand what's going on. That's kind of the basic thing that we do, is make sure they understand. It's kind of like if you've ever been in a new school or a new teacher, you kind of want to know what the rules are, what's important to them, and so that's kind of our main job. So, and that's kind of it. We have a lot of clients, and we try to do our best, and it is always satisfying when we've got that feeling that this person really appreciates what we've done for them.
Hey kids, it's Christy Chapman again. I'm the prosecutor for the state of Louisiana, and I just wanted to let you know that our main job as a prosecutor is to ensure that justice is done for everyone. We want justice for the defendant, we want justice for you and the public, and we want justice for our victims. And so that's why we come to court every day, is to make sure that the right thing gets done all the time, and that's what the judge does as well. So we're all here to make sure you're safe and to make sure that there's justice.
All right, boys and girls, there's one other thing that I want to talk to you about today. You've heard from me, you've heard from security, you've heard from the prosecutors, and you've heard from the defense. There's one thing that we need to discuss, and this is afforded to anyone that is accused of a crime. Ms. Chapman talked about her job and what she does in bringing charges against people, and then bringing those charges and bringing that evidence to court against a person. Mr. Collier from the defense side told you what he did, he explained things to his clients, but he also is there to make sure that the state, meaning the district attorney's office, does their job. And their job, and this is key to our judicial system, is to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person committed a crime. The state is trying to take someone's liberty away because of their actions or alleged actions. So therefore, the state, meaning the DA's office, has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person did the crime that they're accused of. And so the defense attorney, they ensure that the state does that. So again, we have confidence in the outcome of the proceeding. And if the state does not prove beyond a reasonable doubt what they are accusing the defendant of, then the defendant is declared not guilty. And so if you're trying to take someone's liberty away, it's a very high burden that the state must meet. But if they do meet that burden of proof, then the trier of fact, meaning the jury, will be able to find that person guilty. But if they don't meet their burden of proof, they haven't proved beyond a reasonable doubt, then the person is declared not guilty, regardless of whether they're actually guilty or not guilty. So I just wanted to point that out. That's what we do every single day, and I hope this helps you get a better understanding of what I and the whole judicial system does on a day-to-day basis. Thank you. All right, boys and girls, another thing that I did want to show you today, since y'all are not able to come down to the courthouse, but this is my office. This is my chambers. This is where I do a lot of my deliberations and a lot of my work. I have several staff members that make me look good every single day, but they make sure that the work that I need to do comes before me so that I can make decisions which I'm required to do. As you can see, I have a lot of books. I use these in addition to doing research on the internet to help me make decisions on the issues of law that come before me. And then I also have a staff attorney who does research as well and helps me make those decisions. But this is my office, and this is where I do almost all my work except for when I'm in my courtroom right there. So hopefully this helps you out, and y'all appreciate the judicial system, because it's a great system, and I'm glad and proud to be a part of it.
Well, hi, welcome everybody. My name is Amy Lowe, and I have two children at UHigh. I have Charlotte is in the 6th grade and Rebecca in the 7th grade, and I'm so happy that y'all invited me to speak today. I'm going to talk to y'all a little bit about the 3 branches of government and about the difference between a civil trial and a criminal trial, and how all of these things fit together into what lawyers do every day, and judges and people that work in the judicial system. So first of all, there's a difference between criminal law and civil law. So you all saw the video of Judge Higginbotham. He is a criminal lawyer, and a criminal law is just what it sounds like. When someone commits a crime, those trials are handled differently than what's called a civil trial. Civil trials have judges, they have juries, they have lawyers. All the same things are present in both types of cases. But a civil lawsuit has to do with the payment of what we call damages, which is really money. A criminal case has to do with a criminal charge, and so there's potential to go to jail. So they're different in that sense, and there's different laws that apply to both. But what they have in common with both civil and criminal is the basic foundation of our American judicial system, which is that every single citizen of the United States is entitled to a fair jury, entitled to a fair judicial system, entitled to be treated as equal under the law. And the law has to apply equally to everybody. And so whether it's civil or criminal, that's going to be the standard. So I'm going to give you an example of criminal versus civil. So in a criminal case, you have, like I said, someone that's been charged with committing a crime. In the United States, we are so fortunate to live in the United States, because in the United States, a person is presumed innocent. That means that if you get charged with a crime, the courts automatically make an assumption that you did not do it. The prosecuting attorney has to prove that you committed a crime. And think how important this is. Let's say you go into a candy store, and you go in the store and you look around and you don't buy anything and you leave. But later a policeman shows up at your house and says, you've been charged with stealing a whole bunch of candy from the store. And you say, but I didn't do it. In America, a judge assumes you didn't do it. The prosecution has to bring evidence. They have to have video camera footage that you took it off the shelf. They have to have something, a witness. They have to have some evidence to show that you did commit the crime. There are other countries where you're assumed to be guilty and you have to prove that you're innocent, which is really very hard. Think about it. Let's say you went to the candy store and then you went home and you just stayed home and you played Nintendo and you didn't go anywhere and you were by yourself. Well, how are you going to prove that you didn't steal the candy? You don't have any witnesses to say where you were. You don't have any evidence, and so you would just go to jail. That's not how it works in America. We live in the best country in the world, and in America, you are automatically innocent until someone proves beyond a doubt that you committed the crime. In a civil case, it's different. In a civil case, what the courts look at is they say, you know what, as citizens of the United States, we are all responsible to each other not to harm each other. We're not supposed to cause harm to people. We're supposed to act reasonable and responsible in everything that we do. And if we're not responsible, we have to make it right with the person that we harmed. So let's take another example. Let's say you're playing baseball in the backyard and you throw a baseball really hard and it goes straight through your next door neighbor's window. If you're responsible, you threw the baseball, maybe you didn't even mean it and it was just an accident. That's what we call negligence, because you were responsible not to break that person's window. In a civil case, if you were found to have been unreasonable in the way that you broke your neighbor's window, you would have to pay your neighbor back for whatever it costs to fix their window. You would not go to jail. So in a civil case, you might have to pay money, but you don't have to go to jail. In a criminal case, the possibility of going to jail is there. But again, in both cases, you have judges, you have lawyers, you have juries, you have all the same things on both criminal and civil cases. And the same basic standards apply to all cases for all citizens of the United States. And this was set up in the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Okay, so the 14th Amendment says that all citizens in the United States have to be treated the same. They're entitled to equal protection under the law. We all are treated the same, whether you're a man or a woman, no matter the color of your skin, no matter your religion. Everybody has to be treated fairly and equally under the law. And so the 14th Amendment is a perfect place for us to talk about the three branches of government and how they work together. So the 14th Amendment was passed by the legislative branch. Congress, in the United States Congress, the House and the Senate is the legislative branch, passed the 14th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment says all citizens have to be treated equally under the law. Well then, after that 14th Amendment was passed, the states then passed laws trying to interpret what that means. What does it mean to be treated equally? How do we get specific about how that's applied? And so one of the first really important cases that came out after that was a case called Plessy versus Ferguson. It was a civil case, not a criminal case. But in that civil case, there were states that said, you know what we think the 14th Amendment means? We think that it means everybody needs to be treated the same, but separate. That case was called separate but equal. So we're gonna have some hotels where only African Americans stay in that hotel. And some hotels where only white people stay in that hotel. They'll be the same kind of hotel, but they're gonna be separate. Same with public schools. We're gonna have African American children go to one school and white children go to a different school. And they'll be treated the same kind of school, but separate. Well, as you can imagine, it really wasn't the same, and it really wasn't equal. But what happened was that was a case that came after the 14th Amendment. So that's the judicial branch. The judicial branch looked at that issue of separate but equal and applied it to the existing law, the 14th Amendment, and they said, we think that's fine. Now this was a long time ago, thankfully. But then, someone else brought a new case to the judicial branch, and this is Brown versus the Board of Education. And the lawyer said, that's not really equal. To treat people separately is not really the same thing as equal. It ought to be that everybody gets access to the same hotels, the same schools, the same restaurants. That's what's really equal means. And so the court looked at the 14th Amendment again, and they interpreted, what does this really mean? And in Brown versus Board of Education, they overruled Plessy and said, that's bad law. You didn't interpret the 14th Amendment correctly. How it should be is that all people get access to all places. We all have to be treated the same, and that was a good result. That was a good result, okay? So the judicial branch looked at the law that came from the legislative branch and interpreted it. And then you have executive branch, so the White House, the president can issue executive orders that have to do with laws pertaining to how people are treated. And so all three branches are helping to advance this ideal that America has, that all people should be treated equally, regardless of their gender, regardless of their race, regardless of their religion, that we're all the same and we're all entitled to justice. We're all entitled to fairness and freedom under our Constitution. So we have a great country. All those branches work together to provide that. And I hope you'll have a great time learning more about the judicial system. Thanks.
Hi students, my name is Katie Goodson. My husband Mark and I have 3 children at UHigh, and their names are Bradley, Callaway, and Lauren. I've enjoyed being a part of your mock trial process over the years, and this year I'm going to pick up on what happens when you get to trial and sort of the order of events. I know that Judge Higginbotham has either told you or will tell you about the different players in terms of all the different people who are in the room. And once everybody's there, you get started. You have the prosecution, of course, on one side, and this matter is a criminal case, and you have the defense attorneys. I am a defense attorney. I actually am in a corporate defense attorney role, so not exactly the same as what you're doing today that a criminal defense attorney would do, but that also kind of opens your eyes to the different sorts of attorneys that are out there. So once you're gathered for your criminal trial, there will first be a process called voir dire, and that is just preliminary questioning of potential jurors. As Ms. Lowe spoke about, here in the United States, you're entitled to a fair trial. And beyond everything that she mentioned, that also means that the people who may decide your fate, whether or not you're guilty or innocent, will look a lot like you do. Okay, back in years and years ago, that wasn't always the case, okay? The jury was typically 10 to 12 white men, and that was who decided no matter what. Today, they take a random selection of people, way more than could be needed for the final jury of 12. They bring them into the courtroom that day, and both sides, attorneys, will question all of these potential jurors until they think that they have a set of 12 fair jurors. And so in your case, let's think about this. Who is going to be in your jury, or who was in your jury? They were 4th graders who, just like you, got up there and they decided whether or not you were innocent or guilty. And so those 4th graders may be girls, they may be boys, they may live near each other, they may not know each other at all. And so the point is, we want it to be a very broad selection, so that makes it that much more fair. Once the jury is selected, the questioning will begin on both sides, and they will call witnesses. Each side can call their witnesses, ask them questions, and let that witness try to help them prove their side of the story. So the prosecution's witnesses will they will ask questions of those witnesses to try to show why they believe this potential, or the defendant rather, did it, okay? They collected what they believed to be evidence that was enough to arrest the defendant. And so the witnesses that they call will be asked questions about that evidence, all right? And they'll provide what's called testimony. And that testimony is that witness's version of events. Once the prosecution finishes asking questions of their witness, the defendant's attorney will then get a chance to question that same witness as well. And then they may be able to find maybe some holes in the story, or maybe mention some things that that witness was unaware of, ask them about it, and what they're trying to do is disprove the prosecution's case. In the same way, once the prosecution rests, the defendant will have a chance, and the defendant's attorney will also call witnesses, try to ask questions to help them prove while they believe that their client is innocent. And on the same way that happened before, the prosecution will then have an opportunity to get up and ask the defense attorney's witnesses questions to make their story maybe not so true or not look as good. Once that happens, all of the witnesses have been called, all of the evidence has been presented, then the judge will ask the jury to deliberate. The jury will leave and they will go to another room where they will sit quietly. They will review all of the testimony, the different witnesses' testimony, and all of the evidence that's been presented, and they'll decide. Now, based on what kind of case this is, the number of how many jurors have to all vote the same way changes, but it's going to be a majority, all right? And so once the majority decides, they come back, they tell the judge reviews everything. Let's say they decide that the defendant is guilty. The judge will then review the law, which our legislators make, and he will decide their sentence based on that. You think it's over at that point, but it's not necessarily. If the defendant was found guilty, his attorney can take an appeal. And what that means is he can say, I want somebody else to look at this. There's a whole nother set of judges on the appellate court who will review this case, and they'll decide if the law was properly applied and whether or not they agree. If they agree, let's say, great, then it's over. Maybe so. But the next phase of this could involve the legislative branch. And if there are some legislators who are at the Capitol and they say, I don't like that. I don't necessarily agree with how that case came out, they might go write a law and try to get people to vote on it, those people being others at the legislature. And if they vote and decide to change it and they agree, okay, yeah, we don't like that case either and we don't like what happened in it, they can write a law to change it. So that's where I'm going to leave off, and I hope you guys have learned a lot and you enjoy this process.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Robin Toops, and I am also the parent of 3 UHigh cubs, and I'm a lawyer. I work with Miss Lowe and Miss Goodson. We know that you guys have met a lot of different lawyers on your virtual field trip today. You've met judges, you've met a prosecutor, you've met a public defender, and corporate defense attorneys. But we thought you might like to know that there's many other kinds of lawyers who are important to our judicial system and who don't work in a courtroom, or maybe they don't even work with court cases at all. So I went to law school and became a lawyer, but I do not go to court. Instead, I help people to understand the laws and obey the laws so that they can stay out of court. So if someone wants to do something or not do something and they want to know what the law says about it, they can call someone like me, and I help them understand the laws and figure out what they can and cannot do. So using Miss Lowe's example, someone wants to know if they can take candy from the candy store without paying for it. We all know the answer to that is no, but if someone isn't sure about that and they want to know, they could call me and I could explain to them the law and let them know why they cannot take candy without paying for it from the candy store. So there's many ways that we do this, that we interpret laws. Any of these things are something that I do on a daily basis. Sometimes we review cases. So Ms. Goodson and Ms. Lowe gave you a good overview of how a court case typically works. Well, once a court case is decided, the results of that court case become law. And so if there is a law that's been interpreted by a court, then that is the law. And so what the court decided is important in figuring out how to comply with that law going forward. So a lot of times we look at cases that have already been decided. to tell how to interpret a law. We also review the law itself. So when the legislature passes a law, they often provide some history, some discussion, those kind of things that kind of give you a context of what legislature meant to do when they passed a law and what the law was meant to cover. So we often will look at things that the legislature has said. Sometimes we also review guidance from the executive branch. So you've talked about the executive branch of government as well, or you will talk about it. And they are charged with enforcing the laws. So sometimes they'll provide guidance to people as to how to comply with the laws that they are charged with enforcing. And that can be very helpful. So regulatory lawyers like myself, we use all of this information and we analyze the laws, and we use that to help people understand how to comply with the laws so they don't have to go to court and they don't get in trouble for not doing what they're supposed to do under the law. So there's other jobs that some lawyers have that are not related to the courtroom. For example, some lawyers are called transactional lawyers, and those lawyers may help with things such as buying and selling businesses or buildings. And those lawyers, they review the information that you're required to look at and things that you're supposed to do to make sure a sale is completed, and they ensure that all of that goes very smoothly. So they are very important, particularly in the business world. Another very, very important job that lawyers have is working with the legislature. So that's again one of the other three branches that you guys have talked about or will talk about that makes the laws. So the legislature has lawyers that work with them, and they help them when they're creating the laws to make sure that the laws are explained clearly when they're made so that people can understand what it is the law is meant to cover, and help them understand, you know, what sort of laws they can make and should make. So the lawyers that work with the legislature are very, very important as well. So there's lots of different jobs that are related to the judicial system that are all aimed at creating good laws. They're all aimed at creating, to ensure that our laws are followed. So there's lots of different types of lawyers in the judicial system. So thank you guys for letting us share a little bit about what we do with you today, and we hope you've enjoyed learning more about the judicial branch of government.